What's going on, everyone? Hunter and Sherb from Team Misfit here, bringing you guys the upcoming Baseline Training Phase 2 podcast. Hola. What's up?
Oh, just another day, having some success with Baseline 1, seeing a lot of big back squat PRs, which is pretty exciting. People are jazzed up about their new 1-rep maxes, especially some athletes that have been at the gym for 5+ years, being like, what? You just got to do like 7 sets once a week with some PAP training? That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
So, some exciting times here. We have the upcoming Metcon tests that we haven't quite got to yet because we're still in week 6 when we're recording this. So some very happy campers coming back for wall balls and prayers and cardio B. So I'm excited to watch those at the affiliate.
Only coming off of a Monday Murph, so they should be fine with those wall balls and assault.
By end of the week.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, some rest and stuff in there.
Before we get too deep into things, we've got, I'm not going to guarantee a date just yet, but we are working hard on a significant upgrade to teammisfit.com. We're super excited about it. That's coming soon. Hopefully sometime during Baseline Training Phase 2, you guys will log on one day and see a cleaner, nicer, easier to access, super user-friendly website. Nothing else is changing about as far as pricing goes or anything like that, but we're super excited to be presenting you guys with a brand new teammisfit.com here coming up pretty soon. So we are currently, you're probably listening to this, you're probably in retest week of Baseline Training Phase 1. Like you said, we had some really good success with the high CNS work, that back squat, and the post-activation potentiation stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about what we've got coming up in Baseline Training Phase 2. But we're also going to try to make this a little bit more than just like, hey, you will do these movements on these days and stuff like that, because we want to make sure that you guys as coaches, if you're listening to this, a Team Misfit coach, you're set up for success and you really understand what we're putting into the program, why we're putting it there, and then maybe even more importantly, how to tweak it or customize it a little bit for your affiliate. Because yes, we believe wholeheartly in the program exactly as written, but at the end of the day, your community is not like ours, is not like another one, and while you certainly want to provide members with what they need, which doesn't always exactly line up with what they want. We do, like, we offer a service and they pay the bills, so we have to make sure that we have the correct balance there.
There's a level of personalization when you're running an affiliate, because you might have an affiliate that's in a town where you're working with mostly adults in their 30 to 40s, or you might have a group where you're in a college town and you're 20 to 30 something. So again, different communities are going to need different things. Our goal is to provide you with like the broad strokes of like what's coming, and then you guys can kind of work with us if you have any questions on how to modify or kind of make things move smoothly for your gym. So like if you're a gym that does strength work 5 days a week and you're about to hop on, you're like, are people going to be upset if we only lift 2 or 3 days a week? It's like, all right, well, it might take a little bit of culture to get them to buy in, but when people are PRing, they'll forget the fact that they're not lifting 5 days a week anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to us as the coaching staff communicating clearly. It's understanding the program itself, which is why we do these podcasts, because you guys have a lot to worry about. And we really enjoy writing programming and have been doing it for a long time, but it's on us to communicate kind of the why and the how and make sure that you all understand and then are able to articulate that to your members, because we found, and we're going to talk a little bit about this too, that like we talk a lot about athlete IQ and just being a smart athlete when it comes to like individual competition, kind of the misfit athletics side of things. But that's super important for the people who come through your doors are intelligent these are intelligent people. Just because they don't want to be on a competition floor does not mean they're not thinking about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And we want to provide them with kind of the why and the how, and then that enables them to customize their experience. They all of a sudden start to understand why you're telling them to do something as the coach, which just creates that level of buy-in and they trust and trust.
I think a part of that too is, on getting athletes to understand that, when you come to the gym, yes, there's an hour of fitness ahead of you, but there's more to it than just that one single hour of, I'm going to do 20-minute AMRAP of these 3 movements for 20 reps. Like there's the approach of, hey, we're working towards this. We're going to help you, take this training stimulus and bring it to your real life, and it's going to apply to you there. So like one of my favorite things that you said kind of in affiliate class recently was like, if you just come for the 1 hour of exercise, like you're missing out on what you can develop and get from the class. And, you know, as important as it is to communicate the program to people, helping them to understand why you are doing things creates a deeper level of buy-in because they can see the writing on the wall. And it's not just you decided that, you know, they hadn't done thrusters and wall balls in a while. So fuck it, let's put them together and see what happens. Like there's more to it than that. And I really do think that athletes, you know, most of them really relish in the fact that there's that conversation of, hey, yes, I know that I might be modifying some today or might be doing this movement in this way today, but that's because I have the blueprint or the roadmap to get you where you want to go.
Right.
Just trust me. And the more you can get them to buy in and the more information you can provide them with, the more likely they are to buy into that information.
Yeah, 100%. So where we're at now, we're currently rolling into baseline training phase 2. And then that will take us into phase 1, which is kind of the official start of the year, the off season, so to speak. So this coming phase, baseline phase 2, will go June 7th through July 24th. Then, like I said, baseline 3, and then finally restarting the season. One thing that we're going to start doing, especially if you're a SugarWOD subscriber, and I think this is valuable enough to tell, if you go on to teammisfit.com and you're pulling down like that, the document or the PDF, you obviously have your coach's notes with the stimulus, with the pacing instructions and whatnot. And in SugarWOD, if you're a SugarWOD user, you know that you can find that stuff in the coach's notes. But what we're going to start doing is putting it on the, like, underneath the workout. So, you know, it's a 20-minute AMRAP of rowing and thrusters, whatever. Terrible. Sounds like
I'll skip that class. Thanks, coach.
I'm going to be sick that day. 20-minute AMRAP. And then below that, it's going to say feel, cardio, pacing, sustain. Okay, so it's really important. We've got that on our website. We've got the descriptions and all the under kind of the work under programming. And then if you go to workout descriptions, you'll see kind of how we define those things. But that is what we're, when we say, hey, we're trying to make our athletes smarter. We're trying to make the coaches smarter and make the athletes smarter so that everybody understands the program a little bit better. We're going to just start putting those kind of on the screen. And it seems like a small thing. And I think it is at the end of the day. But I think when that, like, those words and those phrases are visible to somebody, to like the athlete, that puts in their mind, like, what is that?
You
what
shift
does that
mindsets.
mean? Yeah.
You get athletes to understand that, like, yes, some days it is 100% appropriate for you as the athlete who maybe doesn't do all the workouts RX to attempt this piece today RX because of this stimulus. But on another day where that same exact movement comes up and they're like, hey, coach, last time you let me do this, not today because the stimulus is different. And being able to have that information and help explain to athletes why we change things up, because sometimes we're working on building a robust aerobic engine. Sometimes we're trying to work on building up that muscle endurance in certain tissues. And sometimes we just want you to feel like Fran and you're just sending it and see what happens. So being able to communicate those athletes and helping them understand why on certain days you modify them in one way versus some days you modify them in a different way, and why they're not one-to-one is really important in building that athlete IQ, because a lot of times they're just going to see the movement and think it's the exact same regardless of what the workout is.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, and you could easily take kind of that litmus test as a coach, like when somebody comes up to you and maybe they're proactively scaling themselves and it's like, hey, push-ups instead of handstand push-ups, right, coach? And you're like, actually, no, I want this for the day.
Yep.
And that should change. That those kind of scaling options shouldn't be
never universal.
Like a universal, exactly. So yeah, and in class the other day we were we're trying to get better about communicating that to our athletes too. And we were kind of, the messaging was, hey, we want you guys, the majority of the time, you should be chasing the stimulus, not what we arbitrarily wrote on the board. Because who, like in 2001, whatever it was, who decided that Fran was to be done at 95 pounds for men, 65 pounds
Some guy
for
in his
women?
garage.
Like, that seems very, yeah, exactly. That seems pretty standard to us now. But at one point, that was completely arbitrary. And for the person and for anybody who's just joining or just like still on their fitness journey, everything that we write on the board is effectively arbitrary, and it requires the coach to modify them to achieve the stimulus. More often than not, we're trying to get them to, hey, we want you to get this many rounds and reps, or this, we want to take this long, but we're also saying, like, this is how we want you to feel during the workout.
You have to remember that CrossFit gyms all CrossFit gyms started from someone doing one-on-one training that turned into one-on-two to one-on-three to one-on-five. And the idea was these people come to this person, they know a little bit about this individual that's looking to train, and hey, this is my idea for the workout. This is what I was trying to accomplish with whatever task I have set forth. This is your version. This is your version. This is your version. And it's really important for athletes to understand that like modification is personalization. It's getting you closer to a personal training session than it is a group, you know, Orange Theories type of thing where everyone just comes and does their own thing. And if you don't relish in the fact that a coach is going out of their way to try to help you and trying to create the atmosphere at your facility where they understand that when coach modifies something, it's because they don't believe in me. It's because they want me to get the purpose of the workout. When athletes start to see that, and then you start to connect the dots between, hey, this was the objective, and then the objective was met, and I start to build a streak of those days where I'm getting those objectives met. One, we see the athlete get much fitter, but two, we create that buy-in again, which is so important because then you have the example in your affiliate class, be like, you know, look at Steve over there. He was doing push-ups on a box and now he's doing handstand push-ups. He took himself from there to here because he was able to modify for a long enough time to build, you know, whatever the missing link was in his ability to do that movement. So again, it's creating that buy-in and creating the blueprint for here's where you are now, and that's how you get over there.
Yeah, to me, the modification, if you're an athlete listening to this, scaling and modification or making modifications to the workout is bridging the gap between having your own personalized program, personal training, and leveraging the power of the community of CrossFit. You've got the community on one side because you, Sherb and I, we're pretty close to the same fitness level. Some days he's got the upper end, some days I've got the upper hand. But when we're doing the same workout, if we do the same workout, that's where the community factor comes in. That's where we push really harder than we might on our own in a personal training session. But on the other end, when we make those small modifications, that's where we kind of cater to the, oh, I need to personalize this to get the results that I want to see. So scaling and modification is bridging the gap, leveraging the combination of personal training, which has its place, but, you know, as an individual, like, I want to work out with other people. Like, I want to kind of suffer alongside other folks, but, you know, making sure that it's appropriate for me. So just a good little, like, segue into why we're going to be incorporating that. And again, if you are somebody who's not necessarily in SugarWOD, you've pulling down that PDF, I would encourage you to pull those two little bits of information, the kind of the pacing instructions and the feel or desired stimulus of the piece, and just put it out there. Give your athletes that information and see what they do with it, because odds are they're gonna like it. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts. We won't spend a tremendous amount of time on this, but what you guys can expect to see this past phase, again, like Sherb alluded to, we did the back squatting for a high CNS lift. We saw a lot of good success with that. This coming phase, we're going to be working through the Sumo deadlift. Couple different reasons for that. It complements the squat pretty nicely. So we're going to have you guys test and then work through some higher rep range Sumo deadlifts, which we've found a lot of times in the deadlift, those really higher rep ranges benefit CrossFitters a ton, strength-wise and in conditioning.
And again, the point is the high CNS. We're trying to tax your central nervous system, but there's a way to do that in a way that doesn't ruin the rest of the training phase, where like you pull one heavy set of 3 every week and then you can't train the rest of the week because you're just effectively in the trash can. So we've seen a lot of athletes both have carryover to their other lifts, but at the same time, be able to work on the skill of Sumo deadlift. And that's why it's so important to, you know, allow an athlete to do these higher rep ranges, is because it's a skill. It's an uncommon movement for a lot of them. And if we want to really build that robust posterior chain and put someone in a situation where they're going to get stronger, time under tension is a great way to do that. And higher rep is going to make sure that they're hanging onto that bar probably longer than they would otherwise. So again, creates that adaptation we're after. Yeah.
We've seen athletes really benefit the Sumo deadlift. Like, it's a great kind of combination of squatting and pulling. So not that we're going to try to keep athletes back squat strong all year round, that it's difficult to do that.
To me,
this is a good complement.
It addresses areas of your strength that you might not be able to get to otherwise. That wider stance, that position of your body might work on some weak links in your armor. Let's say you get stuck in a certain part of your squat, or you notice that you can't finish your pull in a deadlift, or your clean doesn't feel very fast off the floor. And, even though this movement is different, you are set up differently than all 3 of those. there is skill transfer and strength transfer from pulling it from a different body position. So, not like we're using like muscle confusion as an idea of trying to get someone stronger, but the idea here is that
Tony Horton P90X,
ab ripper X. But if you're putting someone through an uncommon movement, there's a good chance they're not strong in those positions. We're going to get them stronger, which is then going to carry over to those lifts that we do care about and do test regularly.
Yep. 100%. So that is the high CNS lift. And on those days, if you've been with us for the past couple training phases, you'll know that we've, basically, those are kind of our lift only days. So in the back squat, it was, we only back squatted. We didn't have a conditioning piece. Because the sumo deadlift doesn't take quite as long to warm up for and execute, especially in the way that we're going to program it. The quote unquote conditioning is actually just going to be kind of a fun nod to summer and beach season, and it's going to be what we're calling the beach season pump sessions. But for those of you who want to turn it into like, what's the training purpose? It's some really good accessory work and hypertrophy work. It's stuff that we don't always get to do, and it's also in kind of a not for time environment, kind of for quality, for pump. And as much fun as it is to do that, there's a lot of value in that sort of stuff from a longevity and training perspective.
Yeah, no, CrossFit's big thing has always been, multi-joint. We want to have that high neuromuscular load on an athlete. But at the same time, there are plenty of athletes that need very specific work. And it might seem like, why are we doing bicep curls? Well, if you have an athlete who hyperextends their elbows in a snatch, there's a good chance their biceps are weak relative to their triceps, and getting those curls in, which again is fun for a lot of people, but might actually make some serious change in an athlete's tissues where they're no longer feeling sore elbows on a snatch day. It's one of those things where, just kind of thinking about my personal ability in the snatch. I actually went to see a physical therapist, and they suggested that I start mixing some of those in for that exact reason.
Yeah.
So while it might seem like it's out of the realm of what we normally do, there's going to be carryover to other things that are just as important. My only bit of advice is if you really hammer a body tissue, that you give your athletes ammunition for how to recover from those, because again, with higher rep movements,
Sure.
they tend to be, leave you a little bit more sore.
Yep. Yeah, so those days, you'll get one of those high CNS plus the beach season pump sesh day once a week. And then one thing I want to touch on before we kind of go through the rest of the small things is that we had actually an affiliate. They've been killing it, tagging us on Instagram. I think I can't remember. I don't want to mistake the affiliate name. I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but I don't want to say it. They contacted me directly and was like, hey, I've got some feedback for you. You have a minute? And we talked to them. And it was like, hey, so a lot of our athletes with the high CNS, the back squat, where it was 7 sets of really heavy sets of squatting, and there wasn't any conditioning on that day. They were like, hey, we've got a lot of athletes who they want to come in and sweat. We don't we like the squatting, we want to get them strong. Some of them are maybe a little bit older and aren't all that worried about their 1 rep max squat. They want to come in and sweat. What do you guys recommend? What do you say to that the affiliate in that situation?
I mean, in this situation, it's never a bad idea to take one of those beach body movements and just pluck it out and say, all right, instead you're going to do the set of hypertrophy work, and then you're going to finish that round with a 15-calorie row sprint. Then you're going to get to rest and go back to it. I mean, I've been a bunch of times where we used to have, we were kind of figuring out what the best way to deliver these high CNS days and make sure an athlete doesn't feel shortchanged. Get them breathing with something. I mean, you ask an athlete to have a full day like this, you do your beach body session. All right, guys, we're doing 30 burpees for time. It takes 90 seconds and everyone goes, all right, I get it. I don't want any more of those. No, thanks. No, thanks. No, sir. I don't want another kind of deals. And you accomplish all that. You have the ability to hit your high CNS. You hit the purpose of class, which is, again, working on that muscle endurance and the hypertrophy. And then for those athletes that are like, I didn't breathe heavy today. I got you, bro. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah. So bottom line is that the point of that was, hey, like we said at the beginning, your affiliate is different than ours, is different than, someone in Europe, whatever. Customize the program a little bit to cater to your community. So one, I do think it's important that you communicate why. Hey, why were we only going really, really heavy on this one day? Well, it's because the other 6 days of the week, you're usually getting a conditioning piece, and we don't train this extremely high power output consistently. And it's honestly, realistically, not very reasonable to try to do that and a conditioning piece in a 60-minute class.
Not without rushing.
Not without rushing. We've done that before, and that ain't it. So
yeah, it sounds like a good idea on paper until you try to be the coach teaching that class, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to basically teach them nothing and get everything done, or I'm throwing something out. And for us, we found that, the better focus is let's really do something well rather than trying to fit 3 things in and try to do them, at 50%.
Yeah. So on these kind of beach season pump days, if you have the community who's like, hey, I just really want to come in. I want to sweat. I want to, quote, feel like I did something, even though, you and I, the coaches, know that you got a good stimulus with those sumo deadlifts. Swap one of those movements out, like you said, with a bike, with a row, with a run, with some burpees, and that'll work like a charm.
Sure will.
Okay, let's go through some of the other kind of high points. What do you got?
All right, so moving on to the skill lift, one of the things we like to do in each training phase is to make sure that when we approach the next training phase that you've sort of had, the breadcrumbs on the trail of like what's coming next, and you've had maybe a portion of a lift or a skill that's going to be coming up in the future high CNS lift done as part of the skill work. So for example, in this upcoming training phase, you're going to have the power clean because we're going to be moving on to the squat clean in the subsequent baseline training phase 3.
Yep.
Now with the power clean work, what we're really trying to get athletes to understand is how to move around a barbell, because the sport of Olympic lifting is not so much about lifting the bar, but learning how to move your body around the barbell. And a really big focus for the skill lift will be on hitting power position on every single lift that you do, understanding how to move your feet when you're lifting, and then learning that, again, the biggest part of an Olympic lift that CrossFitters struggle with is learning to pull under actively into a lift, meaning they don't fling the bar to the sky and just pray that somehow it lands on their shoulders and they can stand it up.
Oh, come on, coach.
Learning how to pull under the barbell is a tremendous skill that weightlifters you see do very well. We very rarely see a very high-level weightlifter have a barbell crash on them. But juxtapose that with a CrossFitter side by side, it's not always the same. So again, you'll see a decent amount of skill work here. There'll be days where you're allowed to go heavy, and we do want the stimulus to challenge the athletes with weight. But more often than not, it's learning how to move correctly. So unfortunately, you get to play the fun police for a little while and make sure that people understand that, yes, we're doing a skill, but you just did the split jerk work in this past phase. You have a bunch of athletes who did probably no more than 70% of their 1 rep max, but are going to see new PRs in their lift because they took the time to develop the skill that's necessary to do that lift correctly. And that happens exactly the same way in the power clean. If you want to set an athlete up for success, you teach them to be patient early on. You hear the stories of Olympic weightlifters who are like, my coach made me use a PVC pipe for the first 4 years I was at the training center. That's because they want you to understand it's about skill that transfers later on into that power, that speed, that explosive, that strength. But if you don't start with a good foundation, you're going to basically lower the ceiling on your eventual ability to lift heavy weight.
Yep.
Moving on to that, we have our auxiliary lifts. We have bench press and front squat. Again, the front squats, because we've got some cleans coming up in the following training phase. We want to make sure athletes are familiar with what that bottom position is like, how the front squat differs from the back squat. Knees are pushing out, torso's a little bit more upright. We're working on that wide front rack grip on the barbell to kind of be in a good position. And then in addition to that, we're also going to be doing some bench pressing, because a big part of what comes up as we lead back into the season is building a very basic baseline of strength in pressing movements. We're looking at push-ups, dips, handstand push-ups, and one of the best ways to get someone strong when they're not quite strong enough to push their own body weight up is to allow them to use a barbell and say, all right, you get to use a fraction of your body weight to build that strength and to build that baseline, so that when we do go into those movements that require you to be able to move your own body, you've built some of that strength up.
Yep. Moving into just some other highlights, we've got basically once a week. I'm pretty excited about this. I think this is something to kind of tack on to that really high power output stuff that we did in the last training phase, is that there's a good bit of like sprinting, combination of almost near maximal power output sprinting, change of direction work, and then as well as like some kind of short to middle distance machine and running work. So, kind of capitalizing on the nice weather. I realize some of you affiliates out there have either nice weather year round or are able to run year round. Yeah, it must be nice. Us up in Maine, not always the case, but we need to there's just something about getting athletes to move their own body through space. Like, I'm guilty of it too. How many athletes do you have are just like, this body doesn't run? Just like, well, you might be the least functional human on the planet if you can't
I would
move
say a lot of the
locomotion.
athletes, unfortunately, that's a hard conversation with some people, because obviously there are things like, catastrophic injuries they've had in the past that precludes them from being able to do that. But, I also subscribe to the belief that, we're teaching functional movement. Being able to move your own body is a huge part of functional movement. So yes, if it's a mile run, you don't make the person who's going to, you know, hobble their way through a 25-minute mile go out and do that. But you maybe find a version of a mile run that's appropriate for them, or you find a way to build a little bit of confidence. Maybe that's warm-ups. Maybe that's, hey, of the 5 rounds, one of those rounds, you're going to do an abbreviated version of that run to start building in that capacity, because we should always, you know, as long as we're not putting someone at risk of injury, pushing them in the direction of like, hey, like I know that you probably could go a little harder on the C2 bike or a little harder on the rower, but you should be working in the direction of being able to move your own body. And it might take a little while to get there, but I'd like to see you get there, because that's, you know, our job is to kind of usher athletes in a direction that moves their fitness needle the most. And for a lot of people, it's being able to move their own body.
100%. Other kind of our gymnastics focus this phase is actually going to include the GHD. We tried to, come on. We've seen, well, that's a great question. Why the GHD? The GHD is one of the most, is super unique in the sense that we can get a really good kind of core strength stimulus, but it also provides us, especially with the sit-up, with kind of a really unique movement that is like almost not core to extremity. It's a little bit different. And with that kind of open chain style of movement, it provides a different stimulus for athletes. On these days, it's not usually the focus of the training day. It's something that's kind of usually meant to be done either after or even like after class, because we also recognize not every affiliate I mean, we only have 4 GHDs.
That's quite a few GHDs for an affiliate.
Which is not an insignificant number. Some of you all may only have the one, or you've got like the makeshift one, the rogue pad. One thing that we have seen athletes do is use a medicine ball or a sandbag to kind of lean over. That works super well as a GHD modification, but at the end of the day, it's a tool that we can use, and when done safely, can be super effective at teaching athletes kind of about their strengths and weaknesses, especially as it relates to their core and their midline, and then just general like coordination and how to the sequencing and the importance of being able to kind of feel the athlete move their body through space.
Yeah, CrossFit's a core strength program. I mean, we're trying to develop core strength through all of our high CNS lifts. A lot of the movements are core to extremity, but I mean, another really good reason is we just had the quarterfinals, and now that they're allowing higher percentages of the population to participate in this, you know, middle stage of competition, you know, a lot of athletes were like, you want me to do how many GHDs? I've done like 10 in my life. Me. So like, again, without beating a dead horse, the idea is we want to build some exposure to this movement, teach people how to do it safely so that if they want to start mixing them in small doses, they can, but also better preparing for next year, because, you know, I'll be honest, when I heard they're going to be GHDs in the quarterfinals, I'm like, cool, we'll probably do like 40 of them, and that will be like, I don't know, like rounds of like 5 or something like that. And then
I'll come bring you some flowers at the hospital.
Yeah, next thing you know, you're on an IV and a drip bag, and you're like, oh, I just did 60 of them, and I just woke up. It's been 4 months. But realistically, trying to just create some awareness and some exposure to a movement that's a little bit uncommon at most affiliates.
And we've provided kind of a pretty wide rep range. Yes. We've got athletes here who 100 GHDs is not a problem. Like they train them regularly enough, all the way to athletes who are just like, what's that machine in the corner sort of thing.
It's for my water bottle, right?
Yeah,
put my water bottle on top.
Basically the most expensive water bottle holder in the gym. Okay, last thing.
Last thing. All right, we're going to do some strong man and strong woman stuff here. I don't know if I saw one of your tests, the He-Man, He-Woman test, and I really like that. But
She-Woman strength test.
The idea here is that strongman implements, well, again, a smaller portion of what CrossFit, you know, really incorporates, are a really great way to build core strength, coordination, balance, and a lot of things that transfer, again, to other movements that we do more regularly.
You mean everything that I do isn't a perfectly symmetrical barbell outside of the gym?
Shucks, you know, that first year they had the dumbbell in the open, people were like, oh, you want me to do what with that? Yeah, like, how do I do that with one arm? Are you kidding me?
Hold on, I thought that was the gym doorstop.
Exactly, just sits in the corner, collects some dust. But you'll see things like sandbags, sleds. You'll see farmer's carries.
Yep.
And, you know, what's great about the strongman stuff is that they're pretty easy to modify if you take a few minutes. So, like, one of the things that, like, I like to think of, if you're a gym that has, let's say the piece is carrying a sandbag and you don't have any sandbags yet, yes, you can do a barbell in the front rack carry. You can do a double kettlebell front rack carry. Or, you know, you have all these really heavy high temp plates, hug 2 or 3 of them to your chest and go for a walk. It works the exact same way. Yes, it's not the nice canvas bag, but it does the same thing. You know, and what's great about a sandbag, again, is it's more like real life. You know, we talk about taking your training, and the reason a lot of people come to your gym is to be fit and healthy so they can go out and experience their life. You know, a sandbag's a lot more like the bag of concrete, the dog food, the bag of mulch, things they'll actually have to use in their real life and learn how to, you know, manhandle or woman handle appropriately.
Yeah.
We want to be able to show you how to take that uncommon element, use all the principles you've learned in some of the other movements that you're familiar with, barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, and be able to transfer that same amount of information, that same skill pattern, movement pattern over to an uncommon object, and allow you to essentially sort of figure things out, but have a, again, more robust strength because you're maybe using different muscle groups because you can't be in that perfect symmetrical position.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like just a kind of a little like pro tip. This is something that you actually like brought, or I hadn't really thought about. We have a good number of sandbags. We like the Rogue, like the canvas sandbags. We're not
pretty durable.
Sponsored by them. If you want to sponsor us,
that'd be great,
that'd
Rogue.
be cool.
Thanks.
Send us a few sandbags. But you know, the various weights and what you came up with is like, yeah, fill it most of the way with sand, and then you use what, like the tire mulch?
Yeah,
like
it's rubber mulch that you'd see at like playgrounds and whatnot. And again, it just fills the bag up, doesn't weigh as much.
Yeah.
And then between the, you know, a little bit of like chemistry set, you pour a little sand, a little bit of rubber mulch back and forth a few times.
Yep.
And then before you know it, you can kind of calibrate to more appropriate weights. Because as great as it is to say, all right, the RX bag's 150 for the men and 100 for the ladies, there are going to be like 3 people at your gym that can use that with, you know, universal ability to use it for all those pieces. For a lot of us, you know, one of the things we did here is we made a 50, a 70, a 100, a 120, and a 150.
Yeah.
And that allows basically everyone to play. And if 50 is still a bit much, a lot of gyms will have a 30-pound medicine ball, which works great as well. Or again, you can kind of just keep going in that direction a little bit further, a little bit more rubber mulch, a little less sand, and you can kind of figure out what is the appropriate, you know, increments for your facility. But I would say more often than not, and we have, you know, our second facility over in Wyndham, Maine, which is about, you know, 20 minutes from here. We got a little older population, and that 50-pound sandbag works for basically everyone besides our small kids and our kids classes. But everybody else, 50-pound bag is just challenging for them as it is some of the fire breeds in your gym using the 150. And again, it allows everybody the opportunity to use that weird implement.
Yeah, those really like kind of intermediate weights are super important. Same reason we got those like intermediate kettlebells and stuff like that. So folks aren't jumping from, you know, swinging a 53-pound kettlebell to the 70. Same thing with the sandbag. So cool. I think that that just about wraps up what we've got coming for baseline training phase 2. Again, that gets started on June 7th. So if you are, you know, listening to this, you're interested in getting on board, the SugarWOD Marketplace is a great place to start. It's got the 2-week free trial, or you can head to teammisfit.com, download a sample of the programming. You'll see a 2-week sample of a previous couple weeks, just to get a feel for what that looks like. And then, as always, like starting with the test week is always a great time. One of the unique parts about our programming system, it is still 100% a GPP style of program, but there's a little bit of structure and organization to it. So every 7 weeks or so, a new training phase starts. It kind of refreshes everybody's like interest and willingness to you know, reattack and reengage their fitness. And we always start with a test week so that a couple of those training pieces get tested. Then we train a little bit specifically to them, and then get to retest them in week 7 again. And that provides that buy-in from your athletes. Oh, the program is working. If I show up 3, 4, 5 days a week, this is the progress I can expect to see. And that's super important to us. Anything else?
Only thing I'd add, if you're going to be at the Granite Games, Hunter and I will both be there. We'd love to meet you. If you're you know, a mid-northwest affiliate and you're going to be out in Minnesota, we'd love to meet you guys. So if you're, you know, around up that way over that weekend, you know, week 2, we'd love to meet you, talk shop, you know, maybe, you know, share some good ideas. So if you're around in Minnesota, we'd love to see you.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks. June 7th, baseline training phase 2, teammisfit.com for a sample, SugarWOD Marketplace for a free 2-week trial. We will see you guys next time.
Peace.